Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Thursday night, which means it's myself, Supermac, and Gibbo, the two legends. Good evening, lads.
Hi, Steve. Hi, John.
Hi, Mal.
Great to see you guys, as always, an hour to chew the fat about Newcastle United, the season edging a little bit closer with friendlies now on the horizon, which we'll discuss, I'm sure, over the course of the next hour. Don't forget, if you want to get a question into John or to Malcolm, then use the live chat, and we will come to you as and when. Let's start, though, with Harvey Barnes, Mal. Just discussing it off air there. And this one is now come to the forefront as a transfer Newcastle may get over the line. What's your feelings on it? Are you getting a good feeling or a bad feeling about this one?
Neither, because I think it's a false situation. The same as the Maddison thing was. When it goes on and on and on, that is not the way that Newcastle operate these days. It might have been some 2 years ago and before, but now Newcastle are operating in a very secretive fashion. When Tonali signed, it took a lot of people by surprise. Nobody had even heard of him, I don't think, a week before he signed for Newcastle. And so Newcastle, they do things very much on the quiet, and it's just it's too many headlines, too many stories, and I think it's all a false situation. I really do. What I'm expecting is Newcastle to come up with a name that we haven't expected.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mal. We get a list done by Barry Hogan each week. It's up to 184 names linked since the 6th of June. We'll get the updated list at the weekend, but we're hedging towards 200 players. John, I think Malcolm makes a point there, doesn't he? The players that we tend to sign are the players we don't hear about, and maybe Harvey Barnes could be a bit of a red herring in the transfer storyline.
Well, I think it's right in as much as what Malcolm's saying is once you hear about a player continually going to come to Newcastle, eventually he doesn't. We've mentioned Maddison. We can also mention Tierney of Arsenal, who looks as if he now could go to Celtic, back to Celtic, his old club. Let's establish one thing right from the start, though. This isn't the so-called newspaper talk. Newcastle were and have been interested in Maddison, who they bid for 3 times and had it knocked back. Harrison's a long-term one. They bid for Harrison last season at the same time as Maddison. And at one stage last season, they bid for both of them in a double bid. They said 50 million for the two to Leicester, and it didn't happen. The point that I feel with Newcastle is that while and Tierney's been well on the map for yonks, when they don't manage to get it over the line quickly, it doesn't happen. Rather than there's never been anything in it. I don't for 1 second believe that, because we've been in for Maddison, we've been in for Harrison, we've been in for Tierney, and it's well documented, and the other clubs have agreed that Newcastle made offers. But when we don't get them over the line and it drags on, I begin to think the person isn't going to come. Because in the main, Newcastle conclude deals quite quickly. But there has, and I think that's what makes a few fans a little bit twitchy. We're used, aren't we? We Geordies are used to the fact that we don't get superstar players or whatever. This was before the takeover, and therefore we fail regularly in the transfer market. We've been spectacularly good in the transfer market under the new regime, but we get Tonali through the door, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of quietness, and Manchester United go out and get Mason Mount, and Liverpool go out and get a guy that won the World Cup with Argentina, and the Hungarian who we were linked with for an awful long time went to Liverpool. And then Aston Villa signed a couple of players, and Spurs get Maddison, and suddenly we get twitchy, don't we? The old Geordie comes out like clinking neck, or we're going to do any deals, etc., etc. And we all get twitchy and fidgety because we want people over the line. I think Harrison is at the stage where it will happen this weekend, or it won't at all, because it's gone on, and Madison went on for an awful long time.
Harvey Barnes, you mean? Harvey Barnes.
So yeah, I do mean Bonds, not
Yeah.
I do mean Harvey Bonds. I do apologise, but this happens with Newcastle. One of the reasons they're successful is they persist for players. You know, we stayed with Botman for a long time. We stayed with Bruno. We are persistent, Isaac. We are persistent in going for a player, and I think that wins over the player a lot of the time, because he thinks, "Hey, this club cares about me. They've tried for an awful long time to get me, so I'll go there." We're quite good at that. But if we feel that we're not getting a good value for money deal, like the club wants too much money, sees us as a bunch of Saudis who have got a fortune, so let's rip them off, Newcastle walk away. They are willing to walk away. So sometimes in their persistence, they will end up walking away. I think they walked away from Madison in the end. And they could well walk away from Harrison. I mean, the interesting thing with Harrison is it's said in one breath that he's absolutely agreed terms and is desperate to come. That's a totally different thing from Leicester hanging out for as much money as they can get, of course. But on Harvey Barnes, but on the other side, if that situation, I've seen stories put out in London that Harvey Barnes fancies playing in London, and therefore West Ham are favourites to get him. So it's like any transfers, isn't it? Until they're over the line, they're not done. Until we see the guy in a black and white shirt or waving a scarf above his head with a pen in his hand, you know, we see the signing photograph, then it's not done. There's a long time left in the transfer market, but there's a lot of, you know what, there's a lot of positions we want. I mean, we obviously want a winger because otherwise we wouldn't be in for Harvey Barnes. But we also want an attacking midfielder. We also want a left back because we haven't got an orthodox one. We want a right-sided centre half. We've been in for a right back, although we've got Kieran Trippier. We've been in for the Southampton right back because we don't feel there's good cover there. We're not going to get them all. That's about 5 signings, isn't it? We're not going to get 5 signings this summer. Absolutely no chance. So it's a matter of priority or availability. But I get a little bit cynical when I keep reading, we're one step off Bonds will be on the train tomorrow morning. I get a little bit cynical because it really doesn't happen. It didn't happen with Madison. And it didn't happen. We were well in, weren't we? Well linked with the Hungarian that's just gone to Liverpool from Leipzig.
Yes, it was like.
You know, we were batting in for him. So I would like to see another one. Time is on our side, but I would like to see another one over the line, relatively sharpish, because we've got a few positions to look at. And there is talk that once we spend our next big pot of gold, having spent quite a lot on Tonali, we are then in a position where with financial fair play, we're restricted. So we'll be looking at on loan players, which always come in the last 2 to 3 weeks of the transfer window, you know, when clubs think, yeah, we can afford to let him go out, etc. But we'll be looking to fill some of those key positions with on loan players once we've made another big signing for whatever position becomes available.
Okay, bit of criticism coming on social media for Luke Edwards. Not the first time. He's got broad shoulders. He's written an article in the Telegraph today suggesting that Newcastle risk being underprepared for that Champions League return. And, you know, it's the way a headline is written, Malcolm, can be sometimes a bit deceiving as to what's actually in the article. If you read it, what he's essentially saying is that the club could actually start going backwards because the spending power of Saudi Arabia's PIF is stunted by financial fair play. Now, reading the article, it's nothing new. It's nothing that we didn't know. A lot of Newcastle fans are getting their proverbial knickers in the twist, you know, having a pop at Luke. But in essence, he's simply stating fact. And I think what we've said on this programme and on all the other programmes on this platform is simply trust the process. Newcastle are ahead of the game. We are at least 2, if not 3 seasons ahead of where we expected to be, due to the magnificent effort by the manager and the players in the last 2 years. So for me personally, I'm not getting worried. I'm not getting concerned. If we get knocked out of the Champions League in the group stage, it'll be disappointing, but we got there. You know what I mean? From my perspective, I think there needs to be a sense of reality. And I don't think what Luke's, and it's not very often I agree with Luke, but I haven't read the article. I genuinely believe he's simply just stating what we all knew already, that we are being hampered by financial fair play because we are doing things correctly, Malcolm.
Yeah, very much so. It's leaving us well behind the sides that we're seeking to compete with in the Premier League. Well behind in terms of financial power. I think we can thank Mike Ashley for that in a lot of ways. So Newcastle, they are restricted by the fair play situation, and so they've got to make the best of a bad bunch, if you like. Knowing that we've still got to play in the Champions League, and I think that you're right, that we've got to look on the situation that we are going to get better and better and better as the seasons go by, and that we're nowhere near where we want to actually aim, where we're aiming for. We're nowhere near it yet. I don't think that the board will be satisfied and the manager be fully satisfied for at least a decade. But we will get there over time. But just on with regards to transfers, of course, the pre-season training is starting anytime now, and once that starts, then business seems to cease for a month. The window might be open, but there's very little business done because managers are getting involved with 3 sessions a day. They've got a huge number of players that they've got to handle quite differently, some of them, and so there's an awful lot of preparation, organisation that's required for pre-season training. It's a sort of dead time as far as the supporters are concerned, but what's actually happening in the clubs is probably the busiest time of the year, and all concentration must be on it. And of course, Newcastle are going to be starting their training without a number of international players. All their international players are not arriving until a fortnight later, I don't think. And so there is always a transfer lull at this time. There's a lull for somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks, and then once the season starts, we get games underway, then it all goes wild again. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but it's a good time for Dan Ashworth, because he's not involved directly with the players and with training and what have you. So he will be planning and creating his strategy, putting it to the manager to come up with the right solutions, and we will get to where we want to be, I think. But it's all bite-sized pieces that we've got to do it by, each close season. We'll get there, though. We'll get there. And with regards to the Champions League, I think you're right when you say that the fact is that we actually got there against all of the odds, that we've got there. And okay, it's going to be a grand adventure, but if we don't get beyond the group stage, I think we've all just got to say Well, that was thoroughly enjoyable. We're going to be back, and we're going to be doing a lot better as time goes by.
Yeah, and look, let's face it, teams in Scotland get there every year and get knocked out usually in the first round. So, there's nothing unusual in it. There's nothing to be ashamed of, only the best. The cream rises to the top. And like we say, our job now is to try and qualify for the Champions League season in, season out, then start having a go on it.
When you just look at Manchester City, for heaven's sake, they can actually put out two teams that are reasonably comparable.
I mean, the thing is,
near that situation.
The thing is, no, we're not, and we can't expect to be. I mean, look how long it's taken Manchester City to win Europe. I mean,
that's right, John.
Until last season, they'd gone 10, 12 years and hadn't won Europe. And I mean, is
it 2008 that was when
the takeover happened in the
yes. It was 2008 when the takeover. So here we are 15 years later, and they've only just won it for the first time. So
it happens.
We're going to have a great 15 years in trying to better them.
Yeah, mind you, in that time they've won 5 out of 6 Premier League titles, so they haven't been dawdling too much. They've picked up the odd little bauble along the way, and about 74 League Cups. But there we go. But it's all steps, isn't it? It's all stepping stones towards the ultimate prize, and that's why I don't necessarily look at not winning the League Cup this season as a failure. It was a stepping stone. We got to a final. We hadn't been in the final for 20 odd years. We got to a cup final. We haven't been in the Champions League for 20 years. We're in the Champions League. We've stepped forward with getting to a cup final. We've stepped forward with getting to the Champions League. The next step is that we actually win a domestic trophy, and we actually make it beyond the group stage in the Champions League. We could well do that this time in second place or something, but we could well not. And if we're not, do we go in the Europa League and do something there? If we finish third, drop down into that, or go out of Europe and we're in against next season. The elite clubs aren't the clubs that do it once, like Leicester win the Premier League title once, or on the FA Cup once. The elite clubs are elite clubs because season after season after season, they finish in the top 4 and they qualify for the Champions League. And that's what we've got to look to become, is to do it regular, not a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
Being a flash in the pan, how many years ago was it we finished 5th top with Pardew and Ashley and went into Europe, albeit not the Champions League, of course, but went into Europe. We were back at 16th the following season, having been 11th the previous season. That was the definition of a flash in the pan that season. That is going to happen with the current Newcastle. But we've sometimes got to remember and pinch ourselves that when we talk about how far will we go in the Champions League, will we win a domestic cup, etc., that we are 1 year from being a relegation side. Only last season, from being the season before, we fought relegation as we always do. So, the rise has been rapid, and sometimes it can be so rapid, you lose sight of how far you've come and expect to continue at this pace. If we continue at this pace, we win the domestic cup next season, and we'll win the Premier League the next season, and win the Champions League the season after. I don't think it happens quite as quick as that, but we're on the right steps, and isn't that wonderful? Because we were on no steps at all a year ago.
Yeah, great points, lads. Learn to walk before you run, says Stephen. Tom says, let's get ourselves back to Wembley this season. And it's all positive and all good points that everybody makes. I've got to get these in. I've missed these the last couple of weeks as well. I've had them saved on the system. And as often people send in things for Malcolm or for John. Stuart says, Steve, I was born in Bedford, but moved north when I was 10. My mum is adamant she saw Malcolm in his playing days at Bedford train station wearing a white or cream suit. Can you ask Malcolm next time he's on, if possible? She tells me there's time and time again, every time his name comes up. Malcolm, were you ever at Bedford train station in a white suit or cream suit?
Yeah, I used to travel regularly from Bedford Station down to London. It was very often much easier to go by train than to go on down on the M1. The last sort of 30 miles of the M1 can be an absolute nightmare, particularly on a Friday. And so going by train made it much easier. I was managing Fulham at the time, and I could go down to King's Cross. From King's Cross station, I used to go round to Putney Bridge station, walk through Bishop's Park along the River Thames, and there I was at Fulham Football Ground. A lot easier than sitting in a traffic jam on the M1.
The minute Mum said that you'd seen him at Bedford Station in a cream suit, I knew it was true, because that would be Malcolm. Malcolm in a cream suit. They went together like fish and chips. So I thought, yeah, that'll be true.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Well, there you go, Stuart. I can just picture Stuart holding his mum up in the air like Terry Hibbert and Malcolm in that infamous photograph, knowing that the story is true. This one was from Bill Moulding. And he does say, Steve, can you ask Supermac if he remembers this lad from his Arsenal days? It's Derek Wright, and I know there's a story there, but it's always good to hear his tales.
Oh, well, yes, that's Derek Wright.
He looks a bit different. He looks a bit different these days, Malcolm, doesn't he?
He certainly does, yes. Yeah, he couldn't do a narrow photograph. It needs a bit of a wide lens. So Derek, he was an apprentice at Arsenal when I signed for them in '76, but he didn't make the grade when it came to him being assessed as to whether he became a professional there or not. They decided not to give him professional forms. And so he went to York and played for them. And in his first season playing for York, he had his leg completely smashed, that finished his career. And so what he did was, in a well, what shall I do now situation, And some footballers, they get in that kind of situation, they just implode, and sort of life's over for them. But Derek, no, he got himself into Sheffield University, and he got a degree in physiotherapy, and I was manager of Fulham in about 1982. This was, and my physio, a guy called John Clinkard, he came into my office and he said, I've got a bit of bad news for you. He said, it's good news for me, but it's bad news for you. I said, oh, what's that then, John? And he said, well, he said, I've had Howard Kendall in touch, who was manager of Everton at the time, and he's desperate for a physio, and so he's offered me the job, and I've accepted. I said, well, no, I'm good. That's a big step up in the world for you, and so. When are you planning to leave? Expecting him to say, oh, well, I'm handing in a month's notice or whatever. And he said, I'm starting tomorrow morning. And I said, you are kidding me. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sorry, it was not 3 o'clock. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and he said, "I'm starting tomorrow." So I said, "Oh, for heaven's sake!" I said, "So you're leaving me right in the lurch?" And I certainly gave a mouthful to Howard Kendall when I next saw him. But there we are. That's football. So I had quite a number of injured players at the time, and I thought, heavens above, how am I going to get them treated? Because it needs constant treatment to repair injuries. And so I thought, I really don't know which way to turn at the moment. So I phoned Fred Street, the physio at Arsenal, and I said, Fred, I'm in right poo street. I really am. I said, John Clinkard, my physio, I said, he's leaving for Everton, and he's leaving tonight. I said, so tomorrow I'm without a physio. I said, and I haven't got a clue how I could get a replacement in at such short notice. Well, he said, life moves in strange old ways, doesn't it? I said, well, I said, this isn't strange. I said, this is a bit of a nightmare. He said, I just put the phone down with, do you remember Derek Wright? And I said, yeah, I certainly do. He said, and I said he was an apprentice, and he went on and played for York, but had to retire. Right, he said, well, having got seriously injured, he went to Sheffield University. He's just phoned me to say that he has passed his degree with flying colours, and he's looking for a job. I said, phone him up and tell him he can have one here. He arrived in my office at 3:00 that afternoon. And so John Clinkard literally walked out the door, and my new physio walked in. And he started there and then. And he went into the treatment room. He started working with the players, and the players absolutely loved him. He had such a fantastic manner about him, and he had a brilliant work ethic. And of course, I had a fairly small playing staff, and every now and again, Derek Wright, if I was short in the reserve side, he'd go and play. So when he was playing for the reserves, and somebody went down injured, the trainer, the coach, would run on with the medical bag, and Derek would run from the right back position and treat the player, and then go back to the right back position and carry on.
The only difficulty that happened is when Derek got injured himself and had to treat his own leg.
Well, which happened. It actually happened. Yeah,
but he went on and had a fabulous career.
Fantastic
career at Newcastle, didn't he? Fabulous career at Newcastle.
He had
one of the longest serving guys.
But John, it didn't matter where he went, he was always going to have a brilliant career, because he was just a brilliant guy and a great professional. And it's just a shame that he didn't quite have what was necessary to make a career for himself in the game.
I mean, the interesting thing, if you remember the early days at Newcastle, when two players on the far side, on the popular side, got injured, they have a clash, they both go down, the referee brings the physios on. Derek always used to race their physio across the pitch just for the sake of the competition. For who got over there first, with the fans cheering like heck. By the end of his career, bless him, he wasn't even running on the pitch at all, because he'd slightly put on 20 stone and couldn't quite make it.
He could have gone with a buggy to get on there.
But a terrific guy, a good
fantastic guy, lovely fella, and just had this wonderful, fantastic attitude to life, to work, to whatever. He was a very special person, and I worked with him at two different clubs in quite different fashion, and I cannot speak more highly of him. I really can't.
No.
Stuart's in the chat, whose mother always says she saw Malcolm in the cream suit. He says, thanks for solving the mystery. He says, my dad's a massive Luton fan. I've had Newcastle season tickets since I was about 15. We both had seasons beyond our wildest dreams. So thanks for that, Stuart. And I'm glad we solved the mystery. And good story about Derek Wright as well. Halfway through the show, time for the ads. Big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. If you want to order some, then you can go to their website, mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks also to New Workwear. They were set up in 2018 and they are an agile and dedicated workwear provider. You can find them at their website, newworkwear.com. Thanks to Media Arts as well for all the help with the video side of things. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button under this video. Hit the thumb up to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on your podcast providers such as iTunes and Spotify. If you'd like to take out a cult membership, which means you get a cup, a pen, a membership card, a scarf, and entry into the monthly draw, then put your smartphone over this QR code now. It'll take you straight to the site. You can set up and pay a one-off fee of £25. Alternatively, go to nufcmatters.com and check for membership. If you're a subscriber, you can apply for a free car sticker. Just email john@nufcmatters.com to claim yours today. The new Shearer raffle is up and running. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket to win a limited edition Alan Shearer signed ball. Enter now at nufcmatters.com. We've got a couple of events coming up. Newcastle United question and answer live with Liam Kennedy, Jordan Cronin and Dominic Skerr from Newcastle World and the Shields Gazette in association with NUFC Matters. Takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre, 11th of August at 7 p.m. and tickets are a £5. The Christmas event will be with Frank Clark and John Gibson, Thursday, December the 7th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £15 from nufcmatters.com. And Waddle, Keegan and Beardsley, the class of 84, with special guests, takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on Westcott Road in Newcastle on Thursday, January the 25th. Tickets are available direct from the theatre, 0844 2491 000, or go to the website for further details. And don't forget, starting on the 7th of August, you will be able to hear myself, Steve Wraith, on the Northeast Footy Breakfast. This comes to you in association with the Toon Radio, 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock, 5 days a week. Check out the Facebook for more details. Okay, always plenty of questions coming in from everybody out there. We've got this one here from Tom Dixon, who is a regular. He says, question for Malcolm and John. Do you think Howe will stick with the same formation that he played with last season with the Champions League as well? So do you think he'll stick with the same formation, Mal, next season?
Well, he'll stick, I think, basically with the same formation. It worked brilliantly last season, and there's no reason why it won't work equally brilliantly this new coming season. But as you bring new faces in, because they have maybe something a little bit different to offer, then you start to get very slight changes to accommodate and the new player, but also to get the very best out of him. And so it's always moving on. There's always improvement to be had, and that's why football managers have to be seriously on the ball, watching each player very carefully to ensure that the system, if one wants to call it that, the system is working for everybody. You can't have one player that it's not working for. You have to have it working for everybody. But yeah, he will. I think pretty well had the same the same formation as such. But of course, Tonali, he will be coming into the side, and people have said that he's a very defensive midfield player. I don't see that, to be honest. He's all left peg. He's a terrific runner on the ball. Got good pace with the ball at his feet. Very, very skillful. Has great vision. And I see him playing more on the left-hand side of things. And I think that with Tonali in the club, I think that St Maximin that's allowed Newcastle to look for offers for St Maximin.
You've obviously stunned Stephen, who's either gone to sleep or frozen, or
I've got it.
He doesn't know what to do about you mentioning Maxi.
Yes, yeah. You were waiting for a 24-hour carry on, weren't you? No.
Where's it gone?
Oh, sorry. Have I insulted you?
You carry on, lads. You carry on. I'm having a few problems with the internet. John, if you want to give your views on that, if you can hear us.
Yeah, I can indeed, mate. I think, as Malcolm said, tactically, he will stick pretty well within his system, which is 3 up top, 1 central attacker, 2 wide players, your 3 midfielders, your 4 at the back. Where Eddie deviates from that is during games. If that's not working, he will use his subs and change the situation, perhaps narrow up Isaac behind Wilson and have somebody else left. He will sometimes switch to a 5 at the back or whatever. He will switch during a game, his tactics, but the side he selects, the 11 he selects, almost inevitably fit into his preferred style, which basically is a 4-3-3. 3 players up front, but only 1 through the middle, 2 wide. He picks his side that way, and then he changes it. But there always changes. Malcolm says there's nothing cast in stone. No. It changes during a game. Wingers change from one side to the other side. Players are allowed to drift in. People are often given a free rein, aren't they, to pop up wherever they want to pop up.
It's not just the coach that changes it, John. It's players as well.
Of course.
You know that a left winger might be looking over the other side and seeing the opposing left back having a bit of a nightmare and think, right, I want to get over there and have a right old run at him.
I'll have a slice of that. I'll have a go at that. Yeah. And as we say, at the risk of running this program over time, if you've got Maxi in the side, try telling Maxi to play within a straight jacket of a tactical formation. He will pop. And in fairness to him, when he's at his best, it's often because he does this. He will pop up wherever he wants to pop up. And to a certain extent, he's given that free rein within limitations by how. Go and play where you can do the most damage. And that applies to most of the players, and often the midfield can be very fluid. I mean, it's very difficult to say what Bruno is, apart from indispensable, because Newcastle, believe it or not, never won a game last season that Bruno didn't play in. That's quite a statement, isn't it, when you think of how well Newcastle did? Every time Bruno didn't play, Newcastle didn't win. That's amazing. That's quite amazing.
It's some stat, is that? He should have a tattoo of it.
I'm sure he has. He has, yes, because he'll be quite proud of that, and so he should be. But again, it's a matter of what is he best at? Because the simple answer is, well, he's good at everything within the midfield. I mean, he can play defensive midfield, he can play link, or he can play the bloke that gets in the box to support the striker. He can do all 3. I know from what he says that while he's played a lot of defensive midfield here, to allow other people to go on, like Willock, etc., etc. He prefers to go on himself. He sees as his ideal position being an attacking midfielder who, because I think he loves what we all love, the glory of scoring goals. And the fact is, he can do it. He can do that. But he sees himself as an attacking midfielder who will play in any of the midfield positions because he can do them all. I'll tell you one thing that I think. There were the odd occasions last season when Newcastle were under the cosh, and in the main they weren't, but where they were under the cosh, when sometimes teams played through our midfield. They will not find it easy to play through our midfield when Bruno's linked with Tonali. They won't find it easy to play through them two.
Yeah.
Believe you me, Tonali might only be 23, but he's already won Serie A, the same as Trippier won the title in Spain. Tonali's won it in Italy, and he got to the semi-final of the Champions League with AC Milan last season.
Yes, and he's captain of the under-21s, John.
Teams will find it difficult to play against Bruno and Tonali as a pair. And I'm even pushing my neck out here. I'm even saying that Manchester City at home, which is the fixture from hell, not necessarily Manchester City up here, but Manchester City at home is a fixture from hell, as was described by Bruno. Even with De Bruyne and all the great players they've had, they will find Tonali and Bruno a formidable pair in the middle of the park.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Going to be very interesting, that, guys. Going to be very, very interesting. John, I just want to give a shout out to an event you are doing on the 8th of August at the Time Out Surf Cafe with Steve Watson.
Yeah, lovely guy, Steve. Watto was almost too good for his own good. He could play right back, left back, centre half, attacking midfield, defensive midfield. He was an absolute genius, and he was part of the entertainers. People forget that because like Lee Clark and that, he was already here, and people remember who were bought in because they always remember that, don't you? You remember Newcastle United now, who you buy in. You don't remember that Sean Longstaff was already here. Joe Lynn was already here. Almiron was already. You talk about the players you buy in. He was part of the entertainers, and if you remember, he was quite unique. He played for Newcastle so young, it was untrue. But if you remember, he had that somersault throw-in where he stood back from the touchline, did a somersault and threw the ball into the opposing penalty area. It was quite sensational. Football was so decimated by it that tried to find the reason why it was illegal. And it was very difficult to come up with a reason why it was illegal. So what most clubs try to do is make certain you didn't have room on the touchline from to do his somersault, that the touchline was so close to the fans that you couldn't do your somersault. But he was quite amazing at that. He was a top player, a lovely lad, a million stories because he played with all the best side Newcastle United have had until now, since Jackie Milburn was the entertainers, the best side overall. They finished second top as the entertainers. He was part of that. So the stories he's got to tell is quite phenomenal. And I've worked the Surf Cafe, as you have, Steve, an awful lot, and worked with Supermac there. And it's a lovely, intimate atmosphere, terrific atmosphere, the closeness. It's like talking to your mates in a pub, which is fabulous. And Watto will be great at that. Looking forward to it immensely.
Yeah, get yourself down there, folks. There's about 15 tickets left. 8th of August, Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Tickets are available from surfcafe@tynemouth.co.uk or ticketweb.uk. Don't miss out, guys. Honestly, that'll be a cracking night. Steve doesn't do many of these, but this one will be an absolute belter. As I say, it's limited to 35 tickets. Probably about 15 left, I think there is at this moment in time. So get yourself along. Okay, let's get a couple of questions. A lot of people, Malcolm, including Geordie Toonva Life, were very concerned last week when you were rather annoyed at the fact you weren't going to be able to see the under-21s final. But of
Yeah.
course, we did manage to liaise with each other, and then eventually the contract was won, and it was televised on terrestrial TV. So we're presuming you watched it, Malcolm, and you enjoyed it.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, I really did, and I thought the first 15 minutes, first 20 minutes, England were really, really good, entertaining, and I thought the best player in that first opening 20 minutes was Gordon on the pitch. I thought he was absolutely superb.
He made two great chances, Malcolm.
Didn't he, John? Yes, and they were wasted. They really went wasted.
They were.
He faded a bit from there, but I think that England did, as the opposition got back into the game a bit. But I thought it was a fabulous game, and there's talk, of course, about that group of players progressing from the lower age limit to the senior side, and I think it's going to be a very, very exciting decade to come. Watching
the wonderful
at both levels.
The wonderful thing for him is that as he was approaching the end of the season with Newcastle, there was people openly discussing whether he would be a Newcastle success, because Newcastle have signed so many players that have been hugely successful, like Isak and Botman and Bruno and Trippier and Pope. And would he be that success? Then he came in the last day of the season at Chelsea when he had to play centre midfield because of injuries, and he scored a goal. He played false number 9 for England under 21s, scored a couple of goals, got an assist. He seems to like playing in the centre of midfield, the centre of the park, because there's more action rather than out on the wing.
Yes, and he's not. And I think that we've got enough width in the Newcastle side without.
We've got enough wingers. He will. There's been a lot of talk about how we need a number 9 because we've only got Isak and Wilson will miss games because of injuries, etc., etc. And I can follow all that. Gordon might just save a bit of money by able to play that false 9 for Newcastle when it's needed. And I was delighted from that he become a winner out in the under-21s because he got a European winning medal. He was voted player of the tournament. What a personal lift that is. And it will give his confidence a huge lift for the start of the new season. However, if I may throw in just a little dampener to bring reality into the situation, there's a significant difference between being the best player in Europe at your age level and starring in the Premier League, in the Champions League, against no age barrier whatsoever. I mean, there's a difference between playing even Spain's under-21s that pass the ball for fun. There's a difference between playing against them and playing against Manchester City with Haaland, De Bruyne, Grealish, Mahrez, and a million others, and the same with Arsenal and Liverpool and in Europe, of course. It is a massive step up from under-21 football against kids of your same age and playing against the superstars of world football. But it will have done Gordon the world of good, and I've been banging on saying, please don't judge, long before this tournament, please don't judge him yet. Give him a chance. Let him have pre-season. He'd come at a difficult time to Newcastle. He'd had a difficult time at Everton. He was League Cup tied, etc. Give him a chance. Now then, the time to judge him is between August and Christmas.
Absolutely. And John, there's an interesting comment that was made. I think it was Jack Sparrow who made a comment on.
Isn't that Johnny Depp? Isn't that Johnny Depp, Jack Sparrow?
Yes. Love the fact he came out and said he wasn't fit enough last season. having been at Everton, that Everton they were sort of haunted by relegation, and when you're down the bottom, what you're doing is you're doing a lot of drudgery in the game. You're not doing the real fitness kind of running, where you're running with the ball. You don't necessarily be in possession of it. Your teammates are in possession, but you're doing this very positive running, and you can do it all day. You can do it all day long. But when you're chasing the ball, because the other side have got the possession, and you're just chasing, it's a real drag, and your fitness levels go down and down and down, which is why I was a little bit concerned that we might go for Leicester players. Leicester, they've just been relegated, and players, it will take them a good 9 months to get back to the kind of fitness that Newcastle need. And remember that Eddie Howe, he's got Newcastle United playing a very high tempo game, and you need to be ultra fit to be able to do it well. And
I think it's going to be fascinating this season, Malcolm. Talking about what you said, about the way we played a high tempo and how demands high tempo, and he wants players to get that fitness. He asked Isaac to do that. Gordon has admitted he had trouble doing that, but he's going to do that next season. The interesting thing for me this coming season is that us having done that in the Premier League, very successful to fourth top, the League Cup, very successful to a final, and the FA Cup, 3 competitions, we now have to also do it in a fourth competition as big as the Champions League. Can we high press and be successful and be ultra fit for 9 months? For 9 months, Malcolm. Of course we can in the first 4 months. Can we still be doing it in April next year, having had this long run?
And John, there is another factor to take into mind, which is being in the Champions League. You've now got some massive travelling to do, and that's,
of course,
and that is always wearisome. It takes it out of you, and you need to get used to it. The Man City players now, they're used to it. That they've got themselves up to that kind of level. But it's going to take a while for the Newcastle players just to acclimatise to playing at that kind of level.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I agree, lads. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. Let's try and get one more question in if we can. We'll get 2 in because there's one which is quite a quick answer. I just want to mention this as well. Jasmine, you are quite right. I get sick of hearing about the EPL scoring record Kane is chasing of 283 goals from Shearer. The record to chase is Jimmy Greaves, who scored 357 in English top flight. Kane won't catch that. Jasmine, that's my argument 100%. Quick one for you, John. Is there any truth in Matt Targett being sought after by Nottingham Forest? Have you heard that one?
Well, they love all our reserve players. I mean, they do that, and don't knock Nottingham Forest because I'm very grateful. I mean, I am very grateful that they did take Wood and Shelby off our hands. Yes, but aren't they? I mean, not only are they linked with every player that's going, but they almost always follow through and sign every player that's gone. And this seems to be their policy. Who was it that I saw a link this week, which I found quite amusing, that they were linked with some player, and the offer to him was, it was a top name that was fading. And the offer to him was, I tell you who it was, Will.i.am. The old Chelsea player that's been at Fulham and has run his contract down. He's on a free. Surprise.
Not William. Yeah, not Will.i.am's the singer, isn't he?
Well, I mean, he might.
The Black
get
Eyed
the chance-
Peas.
No, Will.i.am will get the chance to sign for Forest as well if he wants to, because they'll take everybody.
He must be what now?
It's the spelling of William is like Will.i.am.
He must be about 38, mustn't he?
Right? Oh, at least which one, Will.i.am or William?
He's thrown us.
But
He's thrown us off course.
interesting
Right.
thing, how about this, guys? The interesting thing that the Forest manager was setting up when he talked to William, who's also got an offer from Fulham. The interesting thing to try to lure him to go to Forest is that we'll take you, we'll top the Fulham wages, and in a year's time, when you're really finished, because you're 856, you can go to Olympiacos for the final year if your playing career, because of course the owner of Forest owns Olympiacos. So can you imagine that they're even down to doing that? You can go on and play for Olympiacos when you're finished here. I mean, Forest are staggering. They stayed up, and I was rather pleased they did, because it's 6 easy points next season, but also because I've got some affection for them from Cloughie's days. But I mean, they're incredible to stay up under all the odds, and they're going down the same path again. It's quite staggering. I mean, who's going to go down this year apart from Malcolm's old club, Luton? There's a question. Quickly, you two answer that. Who gets relegated this coming season with Luton? Although Malcolm might disagree with Luton, but I think
Everton, because they'll have minus 10 points, Mal.
Sorry?
Everton, because they'll probably have minus 10 points after they get fined in October.
Are the authorities ever going to sort that situation out, for heaven's sake?
Well, it should be Everton.
Off a level playing field, who goes down with Luton?
Personally, I think Forest.
They've been flirting with it for an awful long time.
Yeah.
Will Sheffield United survive? They could go down as well.
Because they're going to struggle to strengthen, because they've got all sorts of financial problems going on there, haven't they?
Yeah. You know what I think is absolutely fabulous about that question that I've just done, and it's my answer. It will not be Newcastle United. For 15 years, I wasn't able to say that with any sense of being right. Now I can actually sit here and say I absolutely guarantee that one of the three that goes down will not be Newcastle United. Ruddy wonderful.
It could be Burnley and it could be Bournemouth, I think. One of them two. But Everton will
Burnley,
definitely...
I don't think so.
Everton will be down there.
You know what? I don't care who goes down, because it won't be us.
All right, lads. First time we've been able to do it for weeks on end. Let's have a prediction for the two games that will be played before Newcastle United, before we're back on air next Thursday. Newcastle play Gateshead, of course, at the weekend. All proceeds from the Gate and TV coverage going to Gateshead, which is fantastic. And Newcastle play Rangers, of course, on Tuesday night. So the friendlies, lads. For me,
well, I've got to
lose
say,
every friendly.
I've got to say, Gateshead will win by 3 or 4.
As the ex-chairman,
I was being serious. I mean, I played Newcastle's first team when I was at Gateshead, and John Hall and Kevin Keegan took the first team across, and it was a Tyneside debut for Les Ferdinand and David Ginola, who both played. It was their first ever game on Tyneside, and honestly, if we won a corner, we did a lap of honour. Really, it's absurd to try to forecast that one. And with Rangers, it's almost who cares, because if this was a match in Europe, and it was in 1969, because that was the semi-final of the Cup, and Newcastle drew up there and won at home, Newcastle would beat Rangers all day long in a meaningful game. This is a kickabout.
Yeah, when I was managing, I was never bothered really about the result. But the whole idea of these early pre-season games are purely and simply for players to get fit as quickly as they possibly can. And if you get beat 3-0, it doesn't really matter as long as the players are putting in the running and getting them and improving their fitness levels. That's the most important thing at this time.
Yeah, lads, great show. Despite the technical issues I've had this end, it's finally settled down. But great to be in the company of Malcolm and John. Don't forget to get your tickets for Gibbo and Steve Watson, 8th of August, down at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Don't miss it. It's going to be a hell of a night. Okay, lads, have a great week, and we will be back at the earlier time next Thursday of 11 a.m. So we will see you all then. Take care, Mal. Take care, John.
All right. And you guys, take
God
care.
bless. Enjoy your weekend, guys.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.